Greetings and salutations, fellow book readers. This is Mark, and the book I will review today is Journey to the End of the Night. Before we continue, this is personalized limited edition of the Journey to the End of the Night with leather cover designed and made by me. At the end of the video, I will tell you a couple of ways of how you can get one for yourself, if you are interested. Now let's get back to the review. Journey to the End of the Night, or in French, Voyage au bout de la nuit, is a novel written by Louis Ferdinand Celine and published in 1932. It was Celine's first novel and one that brought him recognition and success, and it is his best known work and arguably his best work. While some people consider the sequel, Death on Credit, to be superior, but that's for each one to decide. Celine himself was a rather controversial figure, an anti-Semite and a Nazi sympathizer, for which he served time in prison after the war, and probably it cost him a Nobel Prize. But for me, he was just a good writer who wrote decent, or even by some standards, great books. What is Journey to the End of the Night about? Well, in a nutshell, it is about life as a constant struggle and suffering. Life is the night or darkness, and once we get to the end of it, we will see the light and wake up. At least that's how Celine sees it. The novel is a semi-autobiographical account that takes us on a journey from World War I France to colonial Africa, United States, and back to Paris. And regardless of the place, it is one long fight with an occasional and irregular short breaks to rest a bit and motivate us to keep on going. Now, a bit of the plot. The book begins with the quote, "Our life is a journey through winter and night. We look for our way in a sky without light." Our life is a journey through winter and night. We look for our way in a sky without light. The novel starts during World War I, where our protagonist, named Ferdinand Bardamu, who is Celine's alter ego, enlists voluntarily in the French army, but very quickly comes to the conclusion that he doesn't want to die as a young hero and starts to think how to extract himself from this situation where his youthful naiveness, inexperience, and impulsive character put him. While searching for his escape, he meets Robinson, who also is looking for a way out. Eventually, Bardamu ends in a hospital where he is being taken care of by an American nurse named Lola, who paints him a pleasant picture of her country and strokes his curiosity about it. After his discharge from the hospital with a certificate unfit for the military service, Bardamu travels to the French colonial Africa, where he is put in charge of a trading post. There he runs into Robinson again, but after a small disaster they separate, and Bardamu, to his surprise, finds himself aboard a ship heading to America. Once in New York, he tracks down Lola, and later he travels to Detroit, where he gets a job at Ford Motor Company, and once more runs into Robinson. After a while, Bardamu realizes that America is no different from the place he came from, so he decides to return to France and finish his medical studies. Back in Paris, Dr. Bardamu starts his career by making house visits to the people who are mostly too poor to pay him, and again he runs into Robinson. They travel together to the south of France, but to another unfortunate incident they separate, and Bardamu returns to Paris, where he finds a job in an asylum, and eventually, to nobody's surprise, Robinson appears, and both of them participate in one more final disaster, and that's the basic plot. Now, what are my thoughts about Journey to the End of the Night? It is a twist on a story about meaning of life, or rather, lack of it. The book portrays man's individual existence as a dark and difficult illusion. Celine says, "Our journey is totally imaginary. That is its strength. It goes from life to death." And he implies life is not real but a dream, or even a nightmare, But what makes it all bearable is our ability to live in denial. My mother did not miss the opportunity to remind me that the world is a good place, and she has done a good deed by conceiving me. According to Celine, life is one long cycle of suffering with death as final reward, and no real possibility of change, but rather the illusion of it that keeps us going. He implies that man cannot escape their mostly painful existence, but there is limited control over how one will die. And it is the death at the end of the night that brings hope for something better. But he says that the death has to be earned. You can't just give up and die. You have to struggle for as long as you can. Celine was a lifelong pacifist, or more likely he became a pacifist during World War I. He writes, "Anybody remembers the names of the soldiers who died in the 100 Years' War? No, they died for nothing. The only thing that matters is life." So he did appreciate life, even though he saw it as such a dark and painful act. The book starts during World War I, but the war never really stops. It goes on to the very end of the novel, and it is a constant and unifying factor for the whole plot. War is life and life is war. War not as armed conflict, but war as struggle, pain and destruction. Bardamu starts with an idea of escaping war, but he never succeeds. The war follows him wherever he goes, because it is he who is at war with the world, or the life itself. He says, "They wanted 5 francs. 5 francs is a reason enough to hate people. There will be no peace in the world as long as there is a 5-franc note." Everywhere Bardamu goes, he sees greed, madness and rivalry, what he calls deranged humanity struggling day by day against itself. On the ship heading to Africa, he realizes there is very little difference from where he came from. He says, "They were telling the same bullshit stories. It was only the setting that changed." And he perceives that the general human behavior is not much different from the war trenches. In a span of an average day, at least 100 people want you dead. You will get used to it, but on the boat it is more noticeable. And he continues, "Boredom on a ship is unbelievable. So what do you expect? Society needs violence and victims to sacrifice. When people can hate without risk, the motives will be easily found." Once in Africa, he enters the French colonial administration, and the prose becomes a bit of the heart of darkness. Tragedy. The world only knows how to do one thing: roll over and kill you. And humor. Young Negro offered to introduce me to his sister. I wonder how he would find her in such darkness. Celine shows certain sympathy toward Africans, and he recognizes some similarity between Europe and Africa when he writes, "One gets used to the blacks, to their sluggish good nature and slow gestures. They are no different from our poor, just have more children and drink less wine." So he begins to realize that if you are poor, life is the same hell and struggle, regardless of your location on the planet. Bardamu wanted to go to America ever since he heard stories about it, and finally he gets there, ironically on a slave ship. In New York he sees the illusion of the American dream and its false appeal when he says, "The strawberries on my cake sparkled so much I didn't want to eat them. We were set by the windows so the people on the street could see us eating and work up an appetite." So to Celine, America is not the so-called mountain of gold, but just another hyped-up illusion. Once I heard a story of an immigrant who, after living in America for a while, said, "I wanted to go to America because I heard that in America streets are paved with gold. But once I got there, I saw that the streets were not paved with gold. Actually, they were not paved at all, and I was expected to pave them." In Detroit, when Bardamu says he is an educated man, he's told that there is no need for the creative types, but only the chimpanzees to do the work. So finally, he comes to the conclusion that the place you are at is irrelevant since the struggle is the same. Back in Paris, he further concludes that not only location, but time is also irrelevant since the war is over, but the struggle and suffering continues. Throughout the book, Bardamu is an active observer. He knows his fate, but doesn't accept it quietly, and is angry about his impotence with life. So he carries a silent rebellion against the society, which is simply refusing to go along with the expectations and not to do his best. He fails as a soldier, he fails in Africa, he fails in America, and he fails as a doctor in Paris. But I think there is something positive about Bardamu. Above all, he is an individual, and because of it, he transcends some social evils, such as nationalism and its consequences, and shows that it is possible to be yourself. He is Celine's alter ego, and Robinson is Bardamu's shadow, who appears to obstruct the occasional light of hope and to maintain Bardamu's dark view of the world. The book is a bit of a travel journal, but Bardamu doesn't travel to learn the truth about life, since he could have picked it all up in France. He travels to learn and kill any hope that there might be some faraway paradise where the people and life are different. And the travels showed him that the grass on the other side is as burned as the grass back home. To sum it up, Journey to the End of the Night is about Celine's view of the world, which was rather cynical and pessimistic. And this should be no surprise since his first experiences of the world as an adult were formed as a soldier during World War I. The bloodbath and the horrors of the Western Front made him a lifelong skeptic and pacifist. I think he saw pessimism as realism when applied to life, and both words meant the same thing to him. Celine considered life one long illusion, a dark illusion with forms are reality, but the book's grand lesson is that in the end, the only thing that matters is life itself and our ability to get through it. And that might be the conclusion for all the books that deal in some form with search for meaning. The basic purpose of life is to live, and then you can take it from there and do whatever you want with it. Well, at least that's how I see it. Did I like Journey to the End of the Night? The book is fine, but there is something that doesn't convince me about the sincerity of Celine's writings. Sometimes it feels like writing for the writing's sake. It might be Celine's style. He was relatively young when he wrote it, and there is an occasional lack of synchrony between what he writes and how he writes it. And his lack of maturity might be the cause of it. But that's my personal opinion. The book is a good piece of literature and makes for a worthwhile reading. It inspired writers such as Henry Miller and Charles Bukowski, who consider Celine the best writer of the past 2000 years. But Bukowski had an occasional tendency to exaggerate. I myself can see some Journey to the End of the Night in Miller's Tropic of Cancer or Bukowski's novels. So if you like any of those books, you will probably like Journey to the End of the Night. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback which I transform into hardcover leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A naturally tan hide I buy from a tannery in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First I designed the cover, and what I did here, I used the water painting of a man walking the dark night street toward light, which I see as a metaphor for the journey to the end of the night. This is the back with the blurb, and inside the front cover I printed a quote from the book. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to the leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend $100 but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel, and for every 100 donations I will make a lottery and draw one name, and the winner will receive the book. So if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing, when you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually, it has a very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So if you want one, don't snooze or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here, and until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.